Very good evening to everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Pies presser tonight. Another late one. I wasn't exactly planning on getting one out today, but I figured there are some more talking points. It is the bye week for the Pies, unfortunately, but the news doesn't stop and the thought-provoking ideas are always coming and going through my mind. So what better way to share it with you guys on a Monday evening? Monday, it's a call them the Blue Mondays, but hopefully we can give you a little bit something by just providing this show as much as we can. So we're going to talk about, as you would see by the description of the title and the thumbnail, we're going to talk about some key defender prospects over the next couple of years for Collingwood. Obviously, we've just lost Reef McInnes, which is a massive L for the Pies. Unfortunately, we're really trying to bank on getting Reef McInnes to fill out that gap in the backline that was left by Nathan Murphy after he had to retire from his ongoing concussion issues. And then we've obviously got Charlie Dean and Billy Frampton, who can at times play their role, but it's not on a consistent basis. And when you look at the premier defensive teams in the league who compete year on year, and then you compare them against what we have right now, compared to maybe our 2023 backline with Murphy in there, I just don't think we're quite there yet. Now, I'm very optimistic that the Pies can go all the way this year, but I still think if we were to do that, we do that by negating the glaring issue in the backline with our shortage there. So you look at GWS, they've got Buckley, they've got Sam Taylor, they've got Harry Himmelberg, they've got Connor Iden, who's like your Isaac Quaynor. You look at Brisbane, watching them against the West Coast Eagles. Harris Andrews is just a freak. They've got Jack Payne who can play there. Starcevic, who's going through concussion issues himself. But they've really, those type of teams like Geelong, you've got Tom Stewart, you've got, who else do they have in their backline that does a job? I mean, they've just got experienced heads who find a way to show up every season, year in, year out. Who else is doing quite well at the moment? Sydney are kind of all in all sorts at the moment. That's one of their big problems as well. So we're probably on the same boat as the Sydney Swan side, who are looking for someone to team up with the likes of Lewis Melican and or Tom McCartan, but they're really struggling with that right now. Port Adelaide, they've got Ayah, they've got Braden Zerk-Thatcher, but it's just not enough. They tried Finlayson after one game. They already dropped him. So it is an issue that we don't share. It's an issue that we don't have alone right now. It's something that is a big issue for top sides in 2025. The first player I want to talk about, and I thank you all for bringing this man to my attention, because I did go ahead and do a little bit of research myself, and I found, I don't know how I missed it, but Leal just a few days ago announced, or somewhat was leaked, that he wants out of GWS at the end of the year. And naturally, we just mentioned how strong their back six is. It's hard to see how Leal gets in that side without injuries to that back six. He's not replacing Sam Taylor. He's not replacing Buckley, Connor Stone, Harry Himmelberg. So if it keeps going in that fashion where Leal is just starved of AFL opportunity, he's definitely going to consider the market being out of contract or at least wanting out. So a trade will be formulated either way. He was pick 15 in 2021. He's 6'4", which I was surprised to read on. I didn't think he was that tall. And pair that in with his ability to leap 7 foot in the air. If you guys remember that game against Geelong, that massive game, basically, it was supposed to be his breakout game, really. That's what it looked like. And then I don't really know what happened from there. But this is certainly a player Collingwood needs to prioritize in the offseason. He's stated, or it's been leaked, like I said, that he wants out. Let's just check. Is Ayah out of contract? Ayah contract. Here we go. Ayah, he 2023, which will take place. So he's out of contract at the end of this year. He's 23 years old, not 21, if I just mentioned that already. Drafted in 2021 at pick 15. A really good player. Looking at his stats from last season, I want to see what happened after that Geelong game, because it's just a bit unusual to see such a breakout game with so much potential on show in that game. I was very surprised to see that he wasn't there for much longer. So he played, okay, so 2022, he got 4 games under his belt late in the season. And then in 2024, he played, 2023, he missed entirely due to injury, I believe, for the most part. And then he returned to the side in 2024 in round 6, played round 7, played round 11 against Geelong, where he earned 2 coaches' votes. He had 15 touches, 11 intercept possessions, and 6 intercept marks, and 4 contested marks. That was a massive game. But from there, he really didn't find his feet. He played against Hawthorn, then Port, then Sydney, then Adelaide, then Carlton, and really didn't make it back into the side after that. And what stuck out to me like a sore thumb was you see him get 6 intercept marks and 4 contested marks in that game against Geelong. In the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, he had 5 intercept marks and a total of 3 contested marks. So what he did in the Geelong game alone outnumbered what he did in the following games, the following 5 games. And look, is it form? Is the side just far too good for him to be in? Perhaps, but it's a good problem for Collingwood to have, considering he's out of contract this year, and the market isn't far and wide and deep in the pool of key defenders. Is he from? Let's find out. He's actually from Adelaide. His original team was a Central Districts Football Club in the Sandful. So that's another thing we're going to have to wrestle with. Does Leal want to go back home? I'm sure Port Adelaide will be chomping at the bit to get someone like Leal back home. That's going to be a difficult one, just as that springs to mind. Port Adelaide are desperate for more to bolster their defensive stocks. He would be a perfect fit, if I'm being brutally honest. But if he wants to come to the biggest club in the land, come to Collingwood, be under the tutelage of great players, as I always say. Pendlebury's there, Darcy Moore's there, Jeremy Howe. He really does remind me of a Jeremy Howe. Does he spring out to me like a genuine one-on-one defender? Not necessarily, but I'm sure we can work that into his game if need be. He's definitely a player we should be considering at this point in time. Let's check the comments and let's see what we're feeling about this player here. Steve-O says, "Sup, champs. I think the Pies should go for Ruben Jimby from West Coast, especially if we're going to lose Braden Maynard. Loved his game in a week, and is he under contract?" So Ruben Jimby is under contract until 2027. He actually was playing initially as a midfielder at West Coast, but he's 6'2". He's 191, whatever that translates to. If someone wants to tell me in the comment section, but he could be an option. Is he tall enough? Not really, but he's definitely a big boy. I think let's get a sample size of a full season of Ruben Jimby playing in the back line, replacing the likes of Tom Barras. We'll see. There's another player I want to talk about from West Coast, but we'll get there in a moment. Giga Chad says, here possibly Tomlinson in the mid-season draft. This is someone we spoke about yesterday. He's actually playing for North Melbourne in the VFL side with the placement of Reef McInnes on a long-term injury list and potentially Ash Johnson. Tomlinson is definitely a stopgap to be considered in the mid-season draft. He wouldn't want to move interstate from what I've heard. I know there was a potential for him to move to Perth to play for West Coast or Fremantle. That didn't eventuate. So if his form warrants selection or consideration in the mid-season draft, then what better options do we have to look at? Like in the VFL, we'll have a good enough time to see if there are any likely candidates for the mid-season draft. The problem is if we are top 4 or top 8 by the mid-season, we're not going to get first dibs on the best available defender in the mid-season draft. And because that pool is already so sparse at AFL level, that would mean the same thing at VFL level. So if the first or the number 1, number 2 key defenders going into that mid-season nomination get picked up before we even get to that pick, then although if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure we can actually do a mid-season draft pick swap. When is that in play? Is that this year? Let's find out. Is that? Can we see that there? The AFL plans to introduce a mid-season trade and have suffered a major blow. I saw that somewhere. There was definitely talks of it. Whether that's coming into play this year or next year, I'm not entirely sure. But Tomlinson is definitely worth an option. Jacob Blight is another one, says Jimbo, who, yeah, maybe he showed some really good signs in that first game against Carlton, although Carlton were horrific and definitely played into the hands of the key defenders in the back line. He was also a mid-season draft, so it does give you a level of optimism going into the mid-season draft, thinking we can pluck players like Jacob Blight if we do get lucky in that case. So Rick said, apparently the main reason Ayah stopped playing was because he had a toe injury that kept him out when he hit his main form in 23, then just couldn't get his spot back. Okay, so in 2023, he actually didn't play a single game. Are you saying 2024 after that Geelong game? Because, yeah, he played 5 games after the fact, and then he didn't see the field again at AFL level last year as the Giants made it all the way through to, well, they double chance, and I think they went out in straight sets. The injury kept him out. Definitely would be trying to get Ayah to the club. Okay. Moving on to the next prospect, who is also from West Coast, and that's Ryan Maric. He's also a youngster who was picked up in the mid-season draft as the number 1 pick a couple years back. Initially played as a forward, but watching him on the weekend, he's been playing in defense throughout the preseason, and that continued against Brisbane. And what I liked about Ryan Maric going into the game is how tall he is. Obviously, you want a tall key defender, but someone who can take an overhead mark. But also, he's quite fast with ball in hand. His run and carry for a genuine key size defender is a point of difference. And for someone like Ryan Maric, let's have a look when he's out of contract. Ryan Maric, contract. And he's from Gippsland, so I'm sure a move to Melbourne, especially if West Coast aren't showing signs of improvement, albeit they certainly showed signs of improvement on the weekend against Brisbane, especially in that first half. Contract. Let's see. He's also out of contract at the end of this year. So that's another player that definitely Collingwood should keep on their radar throughout the course of the year. Let's have a look as far as that game against Brisbane. I thought he found the ball quite a bit. Yes, his defense was under siege at times. Let's have a look how he went. But a lot of disposals, at least it felt like. So he had, let's see, view match stats. Okay. So going back to the game just yesterday, he had 26 disposals, 500 meters gained, but didn't kill. Interestingly enough, he didn't have an intercept mark. He only had 1 mark for the entire game, and then had 5 intercept possessions. In the first round, he had 5 intercept possessions as well, but he only had the 9 touches. I think he came on as a sub, to be fair to him. So keep a tab on him. Let's see what his ability is like overhead. To be honest, I didn't really see many opportunities where Ryan Maric had an opportunity to spoil the ball in the contest or even try and take a mark. But 26 touches, he's 196 centimeters. So that is a massive return. And the way he was able to use the ball and drive the ball and help with West Coast transition throughout the game was massive. How many score involvements did he have? 1. Okay. He's not really doing me any favors sort of making a strong case for him right now, but if you watched him on a weekend, he certainly would have raised a few eyebrows and passed the eye test to a certain extent. So out of contract at the end of this year from Gippsland, it's just another player who, if you can try and lure back home and pitch the perfect scenario for him, after coming through as a mid-season draftee at pick number 1 in 2023, I think that's a massive reward for effort. And I think if any club, a Big 4 Victorian club, wants you should definitely consider it. I mean, it's really a sign of respect when someone like Collingwood potentially comes to a player like Ryan Maric, who's still finding his way, finding his feet at AFL level, but certainly a player worth consideration once again. How do we feel about that? What about Curtis Taylor? Could we get him in a mid-season draft, says Chris Talbot. So as we know, Curtis Taylor is in our VFL system right now, but he's more of a medium-sized forward. And yes, we will have at least 1 spot available in the mid-season draft. I don't think that's going to be our priority. We already have, look at our medium forwards right now. We've got Lockie, Bobby, Billy, Bo. You got Will Hayes, who was very impressive in that VFL game. I think, yeah, look, if anything, I think other clubs will consider Curtis Taylor, but he didn't even play in the VFL game. I'm not sure if he's injured, but there were 15 AFL listed players, and the rest were VFL, of course, and not one of them was or goes by the name of Curtis Taylor. So, yeah, I'm not too sure about his position or his potential to become an AFL player for Collingwood. But certainly, if he gets games at VFL level to try and strut his stuff, then I'm sure other clubs will come knocking at the door to his player agency group. Let's move on to the next player. Now, this one is another player from Richmond. We've already talked about Jacob Blight. Ben Miller, who's 21 years old, his contract ends at the end of next year, so it would warrant a trade to be facilitated if we were to try and get his services over to the Collingwood Football Club. Now, it's another case of, well, does Ben Miller want to commit to the long-term situation that resides at Richmond right now in their rebuild? He's sort of been in and out of the team. He hasn't been the first choice defender over the course of his AFL career. You've got players like Gipkis and Brown and even Noah Bolter. These sort of players that are generally ahead of him if they are available. Noah Bolter is serving his suspension. Josh Gipkis is recovering from ACL. There's another Richmond player who is, of course, also recovering from ACL, who's a key defender. I can't quite remember who it is. But looking at the totality of Ben Miller's career so far, he played one game in 2021. He played 11 games in 22, 13 in 23, 21 in 24. So he's got some really good consistency there. And he's played 2 games so far for Richmond in 2025. Last season, what were his stats like? What are we saying? So last year, he averaged 1.7 intercept marks, which was a career high. Right now, over the course of 2 games in 2025, he's averaging 2.5 intercept marks. He got coaches' votes for the game against Carlton. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. Last year, he got the 1 coach's vote, so he's already beaten his 1 vote last year with 2 at the moment. And if we look at his game in particular, if you guys saw him against Carlton, he absolutely bullied Mackay in those one-on-one contested situations. So that's a nice little string to his bow to see that Ben Miller, he's probably, to be fair, more of a one-on-one defender than he is an intercept marking defender. In round 1, he had 13 touches. He had 7 contested possessions, 4 intercept marks, with 3 of them being contested, and they probably would have all been on the likes of Harry Mackay. So that was a massive game. He couldn't replicate that against Port, but I didn't watch a great deal of the Port vs Richmond game, but it seemed like Port were just running riot and getting transition from back half to forward half with ease. And when you're getting moved against that easily, it's hard to defend as a back 6 group. So just the 1 intercept mark on the weekend, and that was pretty much it. He had 19 touches, so he found the ball quite a bit. That was probably because of the fact that the ball was coming in so much. I mean, how many inside 50s did Port Adelaide have against Richmond? Let's see. Let's have a look-see here. Port had 56 inside 50s, which is quite high. Richmond had 50. Okay. So to find 20 touches in a game and show that whether that ball was demanded from him or it just fell his way, I'm not too sure. But to have 20 touches as a key defender and be trusted with the ball is another handy little trick to have up your sleeve as a key defender. And once again, amongst the likes of Leal, Ryan Maric, I think Ben Miller should be a part of the conversation with his contract being out of contract at the end of 2026. I think right now, like given his form and his career to date, I think we could get Ben Miller for an early 2nd round pick. That would be my guess. I think that's fair. If his form continues to flourish, you could definitely see Ben Miller going for a 1st round pick. But right now, he definitely falls in the conversation of a 2nd round pick. I couldn't see us giving up anything more for him right now, considering his career so far. What else have we got? Ed Allen, Don63 says Ed Allen must come in for Reef McInnes. I don't think I've seen Ed Allen train in the backline, and he hasn't played in the in the back line in any game ever. So I don't think that's a reasonable replacement. Sure, you can make the argument that Ed Allen could come into the midfield if that's what you're suggesting, but certainly not as a defender. Sean Barthman says, Busslinger or Hayes, Jamison or Bazo. I'm going to have to look into those players. I actually don't know any of those names. Hayes, is that Lewis Hayes from Essendon? I don't even know if he's in the squad right now, so I'll have to keep an eye on him. I'll look into it. Rick asks about Jaden Laverde. I mean, he's not coming from a strong defensive side in Essendon. Like, they just conceded 160 points. Once again, if the contest is not being upheld by Essendon further up the ground, then they're going to make to look the defenders sitting ducks, and that's probably exactly what they were against Adelaide. I didn't watch the game, but I certainly saw the scoreboard at the end of it. But Jaden Laverde was actually part of a strong conversation in the offseason last year, so maybe the Pies revisit that. Who knows? Sean says, yep, they're all keys, untried, solid through their draft years. Okay, Sean, I appreciate that. I'll definitely look into that, and maybe we can talk about them in another show. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Another player. I know a lot of you right now are going to drop your head and just shake your head at this one, but I thought we include him because why not? Stephen May, who's out of contract at the end of this year. I feel like he certainly disdains a club like Collingwood. We've seen his comments about the Pies in his best and fairest presentation speech, so I can understand that. But if we could put all the bad blood aside, this guy is still near on an all-Australian caliber defender. Things are not quite going well at Melbourne as a club, culture-wise, and there's a few issues internally. So if Stephen May wants to go on next year, if he wants to try another club, like if Melbourne finish outside of the 8, I mean, outside of trying to nurture the upcoming defenders in your side, if you don't want to do that and you've got barely a year or two left in your career, why not try a 1-year contract at somewhere like Collingwood where you'd fit right in, you'd have immediate impact, and boy, I reckon Stephen May would have fun in that back line, and I think we would definitely appreciate a player of the talent level of Stephen May. I know you guys aren't going to like that, but I just feel like being out of contract at the end of the year, he's naturally going to fall into the conversation, whether it be for a Collingwood side or for another club. His name is definitely going to be raised a couple times, I feel. The other player I have, and this is at the bottom of the priority list, but Sam Frost from Hawthorn. He's struggling to get a game right now, especially with Barris and Battle coming into the side, of James Sicily there. And then they've got a bunch of medium-sized defenders who can play tall at times. They've got Scrimshaw, Josh Weddle. And this player, I'm not foreshadowing, but I think, or maybe I am, I think, if anything, if he isn't to retire, he would become a delisted free agent. And if he wants to continue his career, he's someone who can just play that dogged role, literally be that lockdown defender. That's what he's been his entire career. Don't worry about his kicking abilities because he'll be handballing it to the likes of Dan Houston and Josh Dacos. He will not have his kicking license at the Collingwood Football Club. But this is someone at the bottom of the priority list that I think is, once again, worth some thought if we haven't come up with an opportunity to poach the likes of Leal, Ryan Maric, Stephen May, Ben Miller. This is another player that we can throw into the pool and revisit as the year goes on. He was a sub in opening round. I think he was dropped for the game last week. So he's definitely on the outskirts of selection for the Hawthorn side, who just haven't probably a top 4 back 6 right now on paper with Barras and Battle and everyone else that I've also mentioned. So yeah. How old is Sam Frost? Let's find that out while we're here. And where is he from? Does he want to return home if he's not from Melbourne? Sam Frost, Hawthorn. He's 31. Is very fit, obviously very well built, an endurance machine, and he's from Victoria. So definitely an opportunity to consider someone like Sam Frost as we move forward. What are we saying about Stephen May would be a great fit for us, says Stefanos Acharetis. Yep, I agree. Steve-O said Stephen May would want a big bag to move clubs. I don't think so. I think as you get older and as you may want to change, you may be willing to move for less than what you've been accustomed to at the Melbourne Demons. Would he be an unrestricted free agent? I don't think so, because he moved from Gold Coast to Melbourne, out of contract, AFL. Let's have a look. If we go here, we'll go to the Melbourne Demons. I think he'd be a restricted free agent, perhaps. Let's find out. Stephen May, non-free agent, because he hasn't served longer than 8 years at his current club. It would result in a trade needing to take place. For Stephen May, at his age, you would not be giving up anything more than a second round pick for Stephen May. So it would be a steal, 100%. Like, based on his quality, he's still, if he was younger, he would be a first round pick. If he was even younger, you could argue 2 first round picks given what he's done in his career. But just because of his age profile, this could be the steal of the postseason if someone was able to steal the services of Stephen May from Melbourne. And like I said, the club's in all sorts at the moment. I just don't know if many people want to be there right now, including players like Christian Petrarca and Clayton Oliver. So Cozzy Pickett is someone who's all set to leave as well. Neil Bullen left recently. They've had players leave, and for whatever reason, I'm not too sure, but there's something in the water there that maybe the Melbourne fans or Melbourne players don't like. So that's that. Chris Talbot says, I would like May or Frost at Collingwood. Definitely two different levels of players, but we'll see. Frost is 31. Yep, got that. Sean Bathman says, what about Aaron Francis? Is kind of forgotten at Sydney. He was actually outstanding against Collingwood in the VFL. He had that many intercept possessions. He would have had 10 plus intercept possessions for the game. In fact, let's find out. Wheelo match stats VFL, or player stats VFL. Sorry. Francis was unbelievable. Francis. There we go. He had 26 disposals. 26 disposals and 11 intercept possessions. So he was easily best on for Sydney against Collingwood's VFL side, but take it with a grain of salt. Collingwood's entries for 3 quarters was horrific and really played into the hands of someone like Aaron Francis. And I'd be skeptical about Aaron Francis. He's on to this is his second club now, and he was previously at Essendon, was in and out of the side there, been at Sydney. And given Sydney are having serious issues in their back line, it's concerning for Aaron and his career when you're not being considered for selection, especially with how short they are in the back line. Like, they'll play Nick Blakey as a key defender for the first couple of weeks. They swung Top McCartan back. That helped, and they reaped the benefits of that, getting that close win against Fremantle. I just don't know if Aaron Francis is a reasonable consideration. Is he out of contract this year? Let's find out. Aaron Francis. He was delisted, so he'd be an unrestricted free agent if he was delisted from Essendon. Footy contract. Here we go. Yeah, unrestricted free agent, and he's out of contract at the end of this year. So another player. Could he revivify his career at Collingwood, being initially drafted as pick 6 way back in 2015, and was picked up in a rookie draft late in the 3rd round at pick 32 for old mate Aaron Francis. What are we saying in the chat about that? Francis says no, he's a terrible. That's something. I think if he's at his second club and he's not even being selected at a side that doesn't really have great defensive capabilities, then I think we don't need to read into that too much. But who knows? Stranger things have happened. Wouldn't cost much 3rd rounder. Well, yeah, because he's an unrestricted free agent, Sean, we actually wouldn't need to give up any picks for him, and that would be quite an easy. He would gladly walk into Collingwood if we were to call up his number, but I don't see that happening. I think there's a number of players we should target before we consider someone like Aaron Francis. But guys, I'll leave it short. This is going to be a quick one. I just wanted to share my thoughts on the likes of these potential targets at the end of this year and beyond. I thank you all for joining me for this late show, and we may or may not do a show tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see. It may be somewhere between 7 and 8. That's the plan. I think 8:30 is a little bit late, but I just figured I'd get another show out to share some time with you guys. But until next time, I thank you all for being here. Go Pies.